So this morning, everyone, welcome. Thank you again for being here. My name is Tanya Jones. I'm the CEO and founder of Interactive Advocacy. I'm also the host for our 3-day You Matter session, Finding Inner Peace After Trauma. And today I have the absolute pleasure of introducing you all to Dr. Akhu. Dr. Akhu is a licensed clinical psychologist that has been in private practice for over 20 years. She is an acclaimed author. She has eight self-help books, and hopefully we'll talk about that as well. She is the former president of the New York Association of Black Psychologists, and she also specializes in stress management. So again, for all of those individuals that really want to hear from a clinician, you have one on board today. She is an adjunct professor at NYU in the Counselor's Master's Degree Program. And again, she specializes in stress management. So we want to talk about that. So without further ado, what I would like to do is open up the floor to Dr. Akhu, allow her to reintroduce herself, and then we're going to get in front of it. Good morning. Thank you so much.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me and that wonderful introduction. Thank you so much for doing this. This is so important for everyone to embrace inner peace, to figure out what tools they need, especially at this time of year. So I'm really, really happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. So listen, I want to really just get started and jump right into it. Today we're talking about cultivating peace, and one of the things that I always think about personally is like, how do we move past being a hostage to our past? Sometimes we feel like we're trapped because of past mistakes or some of the traumas that we've experienced in our life. So how do we move past that? How do we shift the focus and our energies from that negative energy to the present moment and move forward? So how do we cultivate peace? But before we really dive into cultivating peace, one of the things that I think that we should really do to kind of a soft introduction is, what is peace and why does it matter?
Okay. I'm glad you asked that question, because this is one of my favorite things to talk about. What is inner peace? And I suppose there are probably like many words in the dictionary, many definitions. My definition of inner peace is not being calm all the time, not at all. It's about having a basic sense of calm, a basic sense of peace, and when you are taken away from that, because things happen. Right? We're in the middle of a pandemic. Things are happening all the time. And so you definitely do not have control over tragic things, difficult things happening in your life. But having the tools to not allow that negative energy to take over, take control, and stay. Right? Having tools so you can get back to your basic sense of peace, even in the midst of challenges and traumas. That's what inner peace really means to me. And that's what I share. And that's what I live. I live having those tools because I have challenges in my life too. But I don't want to stay depressed and sad and struggling. I really want to be able to move through those things in a way that serves me best and serves those around me best.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And one of the things that I want to chime in real quick and say, if at any time you have any questions or any comments, please don't hesitate to drop them in our comment section. We'll allow some folks to be able to kind of navigate in and out. If you want to ask a live question and join us, please send the request. But I want to kind of talk about that a little bit more. A good understanding of what inner peace is important. So thank you for sharing that. But why does it even matter that we have it? Why do we need it?
Oh, that's a really good question. Why do we need inner peace? Well, there are probably more than one way to answer that question, but I'm going to follow what Spirit's giving me right now, which is to talk about what happens when we're stressed. Right? When we're stressed, when there's trauma, when we're upset, in our bodies, we have this wonderful system that is made to protect us, the fight, flight, and freeze system. And it takes over. And everything in psychology is on a continuum. So it doesn't mean it takes over completely. If there was a bear attack, right? If a big angry bear were to run in the room where you are right now, you probably would not give it any thought. Something would happen. You'd either run for your life, You try to fight for your life, or you would freeze and hope the bear couldn't see you. And you wouldn't think about it because we don't have time to think about those things in real life and death circumstances. However, our beautiful, wonderful brains treat a big exam, fear of a germ we can't see like COVID, the same way to some extent. Mm-hmm. And so the same stress mechanism takes over, the fight, flight, and freeze mechanism. That mechanism is meant to be short term, right? It's meant to get you out of the bear attack alive, give you the best chance to get out of that alive. It's not meant to be long term. It's not meant to be going on the third year like COVID. To be right in that state for that long causes stress that causes all kinds of damage to your body. So we want inner peace so that we do not damage ourselves by staying in that stress state longer than necessary. Once the immediate stress is past, we need to come out of that state, but many of us don't know how. Mm-hmm. Many of us don't know how to reevaluate and understand that fear of a bug that we can't see is real. I mean, it is life-threatening. Right. However, we can't have that fear with us 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, so that it stops us from sleeping, so that it causes us to eat dozens of donuts. Like, none of that's going to help us in the long run. That's going to cause new problems that we are now going to have to face. So inner peace is about knowing how to move away from that state of distress, of stress, of trauma when it's not serving us.
And that's a really good point, you know, especially because of COVID. I mean, and that is very traumatic for many of us, having to be confined. So many of us has lost family and friends. Mm-hmm. Maybe you've even experienced COVID yourselves. And, you know, and it's just kind of like an up and down roller coaster. You know, 1 minute we're out of it, the next minute we're in it, and we don't know how to perform. And I think that this is a great conversation to even just kind of help navigate that, because even myself as an advocate, there are times when I have felt the stressors of being just confined. And, you know, you really don't know how to move forward and how to help. You know, how much should you allow this to consume you, when those peaks, those highs and those lows come in, and when to kind of step back and reevaluate. So can you real quick just kind of shift and give us some little tools that we can have to kind of pour into our teacup to kind of help us navigate those highs and those lows?
I can give you some tools, and I thought in our conversation today, I thought about, well, what things can I share within our little bit of time frame here? And the first tool that I want to share is probably one of the most challenging but very effective, which is anticipate as much as you can. Anticipate what's going to happen in any circumstance so that you can prepare for it and adjust. So let me give you an example. This is holiday time, right? Holiday dinner time. I have married into a wonderful, big family of brilliant, funny people, but they tend to eat late. So they'll eat holiday dinner at 9, 10 o'clock at night. Works for most of them. They're perfectly fine. I am an early person. I tend to eat early. Dinner time for me is usually around 6 o'clock. So now just imagine we're having this nice family time. We're at all the families together. Of course, this is pre-COVID. All the families together, and 6 o'clock comes and I'm really hungry. 7 o'clock comes, I'm even more hungry, and there's no food. Like, they're still preparing the food. What might happen? I'm going to start getting grouchy and hangry now, right? Which is going to interrupt my peace and my ability to socially interact with everybody. So I'm not having a good time anymore because I'm hangry. They're not having a good time with me because I'm hangry. Is this working for anybody? No. But what most of us will do is we will try to, we're so worried about what other people think that we wouldn't think to do anything in that situation, but be uncomfortable and try to hide being uncomfortable because we want to try to eat with everybody else. But what I've learned to do is bring my own food. Also, I mean, it doesn't help that I'm a vegan and that's not most of what's being prepared anyway, but bring my own food, eat when I'm ready to, and then still be willing to sit at the table, have a cup of tea, or maybe, a little bit of something with everybody else. But now I'm not hangry. Right. I'm not irritable. I'm able to relax and enjoy this space with everybody else. And might some people not quite get why I'm eating when everybody else isn't eating?
Right.
or maybe even be a little annoyed, but that's not about me. That's about them and their need to have things go a certain way. But am I really hurting anybody by eating my meal that I, prepared for myself? No. In fact, I might even be giving an example to some other people that might be there hungry that need to bring something, right?
Right.
Right. I see somebody says have a healthy snack before. I do that sometimes too. Like I'll eat my full meal beforehand, depending on the circumstance, so that I can come up and not show up hungry. So that's another way of doing it. But my point is to anticipate. Right. In many of these circumstances, we can't always anticipate, but most of the time, I know I love this family. I've known them for 15 years. The same thing's going to happen. So in many of those circumstances, you can anticipate and then really think through, what can I do, right, to make this better? If you know people that are going to be there that you're not comfortable with, well, who are my safe people that I can make sure I can have conversations, sit next to them? Do I need to communicate ahead of time, even to the host, that if you're going to do, a seating arrangement, can I sit next to so-and-so? Those kinds of things. But that requires us to give a little thought, anticipate what's going to happen so that we can try to problem solve. And sometimes we need to do that with a friend. Sometimes we can't do it all on our own, a friend or a family member, to have them help us think about, well, how can we set the system up for it's the best outcome? So that's one of my favorite tools, even though it's not always easy.
Right. And I'm so glad that you mentioned that, especially about anticipate and perhaps have a conversation with the family or with a friend, because many of us are still, gathering, even if we're gathering on social media for the holidays. And unfortunately, because we're still talking about trauma, there are times when families have trauma, whether it's domestic violence, sexual assault, molestation. And, we know that sometimes these family members are still interacting with each other. Maybe the information is shared, maybe it's not, maybe only a small group of individuals know. So how does a person, find inner peace in those settings safely so they can still participate and intervene with family members, especially if, maybe the person that caused them trauma is still being invited to family events?
Yeah. Oh, that is really complicated and hard to give a global answer to. The main thing is what I call follow your spirit. That's what.
Oh, we lost Dr. Akhu. Hold on one second, Dr. Akhu. We can't hear you.
Sorry, say again?
Yes. Okay. I didn't
Okay.
hear you.
Sorry. Yeah. Somebody was calling me. I'm new to doing this on my phone. Sorry, everyone. So someone was calling me and I had to negotiate that. But now I've got it. I'll make sure I cancel that out the next time. So I was saying that it's a hard question to answer globally. But what I suggest that everybody start with is following their intuition, that inner guiding voice. That voice is there to help us not anticipate, but to be aware of things that we may not be consciously aware of. So if your inner voice is telling you this is not a safe space to go in, then really don't talk yourself out of that. Right? Listen to that inner voice and allow it to guide you and help you figure out what you might need to do. And again, that might be talking to the host, at least finding out who's going to be there, because even if this person's going to be there and you still want to be there, then if you know ahead of time, sometimes that's what people need to know, just to know that they're not going to be surprised. To engage our friends and family, the ones that do feel safe to us, so that they can be somewhat of a buffer. That they know that this is somebody you don't feel comfortable with, so that you can sit next to them, so that they won't leave you alone in a room where this person might corner you, that kind of thing. So be, again, anticipating, thinking ahead, figuring out what your needs are, and also being okay with saying, I can leave at any time. I can't tell you how many people I work with that's ultimately what we've come up to. It's like, you can leave at any time. So you can go, and if you're uncomfortable, give yourself permission to say it's time to go home now. And make sure you have, again, anticipating your safe way of getting home. So if this is a gathering that you're going to and somebody's there and you're not going to be comfortable, you might not want to go with somebody else that you have to then rely on them to give you a ride home. You can Uber, but just thinking that out so that you're prepared, so that if that moment comes, you know exactly what to do. I think the hardest thing is when we don't anticipate those moments and they show up, and now we're in fight, flight, and freeze mode. Absolutely. With no plan.
Absolutely.
Right? No way to get out. And that's where we feel re-traumatized. But if we have a plan, if we know what we can do, then we feel empowered, right? So that we can take care of ourselves.
Absolutely. I see that Wendy made a comment. She wrote, the ability to say no is a part of inner peace and self-care as well.
Most definitely. And no is a complete sentence. I spent a whole year, this was probably about 10, 15 years ago. I spent a whole year practicing saying no and not explaining.
Absolutely.
Right? And it was so uncomfortable at first because our tendency is to explain why we're saying no, but we don't have to. So being okay to say no, and that's it. Because when you offer explanations, that's often when people then come back with, well, let's do this. And sometimes you don't want to go back and forth. You don't want to negotiate. You just want to say no. So being okay with saying no and understanding that's a complete sentence, it's self-care, and you have every right to say no.
Absolutely. And this no for me was very hard to learn, especially when you're a mother, when you're an advocate. It's so important to your self-care. And it, to me, is something that's learned. It's a learned skill because, as human beings, giving, nurturing people, we tend to want to help everyone and say yes, even if it's at a disservice to ourselves. So one of the things that I absolutely had to learn to do was to teach myself, one, to say no, and then two, that it was okay to say no. And it's so funny because now it's like a huge big thing, and I absolutely love doing this. I have a no pen. I don't know whether or not you all have ever seen these things. They're absolutely great, but they say no.
No. I love that.
So I absolutely love this thing. It says no, like maybe 15 or 20 different ways. And, we laugh and we joke about it, but the reality is that you're absolutely right. We have the ability to say no, and that definitely can contribute to our inner peace and our self-care. So thank you so much for that comment, Wendy. I really did, appreciate that. One of the things that you talked about with the imbalance of inner peace, with the anxiety and not being able to rest. Inner peace, can inner peace be disrupted, or can your sleep be disrupted if you do not have inner peace?
Oh, most definitely. Anxiety is one of the biggest interrupters of sleep. When you find yourself thinking and rethinking and reliving all sorts of situations, then if your mind can't rest, then you don't rest well. You don't sleep well. And so definitely finding your inner peace helps you rest. Resting helps you with everything else, because when we are tired, we don't think as clearly, we don't perform as well, where it's harder to control and deal with our emotions. So rest is so important, and therefore inner peace is so important.
And, and with us, again, we're working, so many of us are working at home, trying to find the time to rest, even if you have to, like during the day. I noticed that sometimes I have to kind of just step away from the computer, maybe take a few moments to kind of just relax, close your mind and everything, shut down, power down. Mm-hmm. Are there some tips that you could recommend to kind of help navigate, resting? I know some people have said like meditation, but are there some little tidbits that you can give to kind of help putting your mind at ease?
Yes, I was going to save this for the end, but I think this is a good place for it. My favorite tip and tool is the breath square. It's a really simple breathing technique that takes a minute. It's going to take me probably longer to describe it and lead you through it than it is for us to actually do it. But I suggest that if it's okay with you, that you let me lead you through it right now, and anybody that is listening, to give this a try. It's the breath square. So what you're going to do is, you're going to breathe in for a slow count of 4. You're going to hold the breath into your lungs for a slow count of 4. You're going to exhale for a slow count of 4, and then you're going to wait before you breathe in again while I count to 4. I'm going to lead it with my finger right here and a little square. You can watch my finger. You can draw a square around your phone or a computer or whatever you're watching on, or you can close your eyes and just listen to the sound of my voice. That's pretty much it. Do understand that if this is the first time you've ever done something like this, that's okay. You don't have to get it perfect. That a lot of these techniques take a little practice before you really, they come easy to you. And what many people do is they give up after the first time. Oh, that didn't work. And therefore they don't ever practice enough in order to get it right. But nobody rides a bike the first day they get on a bike and takes off and goes for a mile. Nobody drives a car. The first day you get behind a wheel, you have to practice before you take your test. Right. So this is something to practice. So don't worry about getting it right. Just do the best you can. Follow the best you can. Okay, so I want everybody to pay attention to how you feel right now. How do you feel right now? Can you?
I'm excited to be here. So I'm on 10.
Okay, you're excited? Okay. So it's important to pay attention because you want to see if you notice any difference after we finish the exercise. All right, so here we go. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Now return to breathing as normal and tell me or put in the comments, how did that feel?
Well, I'm going to say that feels great. It was very calming, very relaxing. And, just kind of thinking about breathing, it's not something that we think about doing. We just breathe, we don't think about it. But thinking about it and making it intentional and holding my breath in, that was very calming and very relaxing. And I think a technique that I am going to use in the evenings to help me go to sleep. I really like that. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. Can I get some hearts and some love?
I'm seeing lots of hearts
for that. We have Wendy saying that it was relaxing. We have Liza saying that it was peaceful. The Chrissy saying she feels relaxed. I mean, this is really wonderful. Big Jaja Banks saying that it feels wonderful. Yes, please send some love to Dr. Akhu, because this is really what we need. Thank you so much for sharing that technique. And I hope that all of you take that technique and continue to do that afterwards. I think we'll have to do this one more time at the end. Before we close out, we'll have to do this again. I really enjoyed that. So please, let's do that again.
We will do it again.
Yes.
If anybody, because if it was the first time for you, if you don't remember how it goes, we'll do it again. But you can also see it on my website, drakhu.com, DRAKHU.com, because I know that it's so powerful. It's so short, really. It's a minute long. I've timed it. It's just a minute long, but it has such a powerful effect. And can I explain why it has such a power?
Yes, please.
I know some people, this might be a little too much science for people. I promise to keep it short and not too scientific.
Yes,
but
share it with
I
us.
talked before about that fight, flight, and freeze system. When that part of our nervous system takes control, it makes our hearts beat faster. It makes different hormones in our body are released so that we have what we need in order to run, in order to fight, so that we could protect ourselves. We don't have control over most of those systems, right? You don't have control over how fast your heart beats, or if your liver is releasing glucose into your bloodstream so that you have all of the energy you need to run. You don't have control over that. The one part of the system we have active control over is our breath. So when we slow down our breath, we tell the fight, flight, and freeze system, you're not needed. It turns it off, and it turns on the opposite system, the rest and digest system. Right? And that's the inner peace system, right? Because it's saying all is good, all is calm, no need to be alarmed. So that's why that breathing technique of just 1 minute is so powerful, because it really turns off the stress system and turns on the relaxation system. So I love that technique. One of the things I talk to people about when I'm doing this, especially in workshops, is to find an anchor in your busy day so that you can take a 1 minute break. Even as busy as you are, at some point you have to go to the bathroom, right?
Right.
And that's one of those things that you have to do, that even if you are in a high pressure job, usually somebody's at some point going to allow you to go to the bathroom and not monitoring you, right? We hope that you don't have a job where somebody's in the bathroom telling you you've only got 2 seconds, right? So at that moment, while you're in the bathroom, take an extra minute and do the breath square. Right? That's an anchor. Because every time you go to the bathroom, and once you connect it, then you'll start to do it automatically. Every time you go to the bathroom, you'll stop and do the breath square. You know?
I like it.
So trying to find an anchor. I've worked with a couple of medical providers, especially in the midst of COVID and all this, between patients. Right? Take an extra minute and just recenter yourself before you go into the next thing. Bring that stress level down, because what happens is, as we are busy, our stress level keeps creeping up. And if we don't do anything to bring it down, we get overwhelmed. If you do something like this to just bring it down, it's not solving the problem. It's not getting rid of the stress, but it's giving you more space to build it up again without becoming totally overwhelmed.
Absolutely. We have a question. Thank you so much for sharing that, from the real Chrissy J. Do you have any methods for children?
This is incredibly effective with children. And that's one of the reasons why I lead it with my finger, is because it gives children especially another anchor, especially if they're too young to really be great at counting. But it helps them follow along. You can use this with kids. One of the ways that I help kids practice deep breathing is to have them lay on the floor, and you put a toy, some light toy, a boat or something like that, on their tummy. And you ask them to breathe and watch the boat go up and down. Right? And adults, we can do this too. And it's fun to do it with them. Something small, something light, and you just watch it go up and down. And that really helps, because it's the belly breathing. It's that deep breathing all the way to the bottom of your lungs that's really effective in turning off the stress system and turning on the rest and digest system. So we have to learn to do that, though, because most of us breathe up in the top of our chest. And that doesn't help turn off anything, right? So it's breathing down to the bottom of your belly. So give that a try. Try it with your children. It's a fun family activity that's really, and it's so good to help children learn how to appropriately say no. They can't always say no.
Right.
And sometimes you have to veto the no, but it's okay to empower them to be able to even say it. Even if you have to veto it as a parent, for them to be able to voice it, so that they know that as they get older, that there'll be times when they can say it. And when they say it in the spaces and places where you can give them that power to do that.
Yeah.
To help our children learn that you don't have to hug everybody that wants to hug you, right? To have that appropriate no, because that's also one of the things that keeps them safe from predators.
Absolutely.
Because when we teach them that they should allow their bodies to be touched by anybody and everybody that wants to give them a hug, we're also teaching them to allow predators. We're giving easier access to predators. But if they feel empowered, this is my body. I don't have to give anybody a hug, including mommy, if I don't feel like hugging mommy right now. So to teach them in the spaces, because there's enough things that children have to do that we have to override. Right?
Absolutely.
But where we can, give them that voice, give them that power, empower them, so that we are changing the next generation and letting the next generation do something different, feel more empowered about their bodies and their sense of self.
I'm so glad that you ended on that because I had this exact same conversation with a family member just days ago, where we talked about it's okay for, you know, your grandson to tell you no, because when you force them, you better give grandma a kiss or give grandpa a kiss, then what you're doing is you're taking that power away and you're allowing the opportunity, the space for predators to come in. And predators watch that. You know, even predators in our families, you know, unfortunately, they see that. And it's kind of like a carte blanche pass that we're giving to people. So I think that you mentioning that is so important, especially around this time of the holidays when people are gathering. So be mindful of that. If your child says no, empower them and tell them it's okay to say no, even if it's to mommy or daddy. We can beat on the no if we have to, but empower them and teach them when, so they can see and know the difference. So thank you so much for sharing that. I do have another question coming in, and it says, what are questions to use as a therapist to ask, bring out assault victims, to bring out assault victims? Big questions, I know. And actually, we had a similar question about sexual harassment that I wrote down that I was going to ask you. So can we try that again? Maybe we might have Liza join us live. Do you feel like joining us live to ask that question? If you put in a request, I can get you to actually ask that question. I want to make sure that I'm understanding the question, if you feel comfortable. If not, then I'll try to ask it again. So what are questions to use as a therapist to ask to bring out assault victims? I'm not sure I understand what you mean by bring out assault victims.
I'm not sure either, but if you mean in therapy to allow assault victims to talk about their experience, I think the biggest thing is empowering them in therapy. I have worked a lot in the area of trauma. And what I'm always clear about, especially at the beginning of working with somebody, is that we need to go at the pace you're comfortable with, right? The pace the client is comfortable with, not my pace. Because if the person's experienced assault, any kind of trauma, then they had their power taken away from them. It's so important in the healing process for them to feel re-empowered, right? To gain that power back. And they don't get that power back if I push them to talk about something that they're not ready to. So exactly my question. Thank you. So yeah, so I don't know if there are any specific questions. It's really hard to say because it's really so dependent on the person and what kind of trauma they had. It's more of an invitation to talk and a helping of them understand that they are empowered. They don't have to talk about it more than they are ready to. And I also give them tools at the very beginning of working with somebody that's had trauma. I try to give them tools to self-soothe, right? Ways that because some of talking about trauma, it kind of like the idea of ruffling your feathers, right? Talking about that stuff, bringing up all that negative stuff can be so unnerving. And people are scared to be unnerved, and then they walk out the door, or they get off the video these days, right? Nobody's walking out of my door. They get off the video and then they have to go back to life. So I try to start any work that I do with somebody that's experienced trauma and giving them tools like the breath square and other tools so that they can unruffle their own feathers. I try not to send people off video or out of the office with their feathers ruffled anyway, but I try to make sure that, just because sometimes the stuff will kick up and it'll happen a day later, or, days later after we've talked about something, then a thought might return or a feeling might return. And so if people have the tools to calm themselves down, then they feel very empowered. And then it usually makes it easier for them to start talking about the trauma, because they're not afraid that they're going to wake all that up and stir all that up and not know what to do with it. Right. I hope that answers you.
There was another question that came in. Thank you so much for that question. There's another question that came in. It looks like Big Jaja Banks. How do you navigate self through a hostile environment?
Ooh, that's a good question. Yeah. And I'll try my best to answer it in this forum. I think knowing self is the foundation of navigating self through a hostile environment. And I guess I think of it in terms of, let's think about it in terms of people of color, specifically African Americans. Right? This is a hostile environment in many ways for us, but how do we navigate it? We continue to navigate it, and we navigate it best when we know who we are, when we feel pride in who we are. Like my mom, so big on this when I was a kid, making sure that she would always say, you come from kings and queens, right? That don't get the idea just because so much around us is focused on white culture. Remember that your culture has value, and that empowered me to feel like no matter where I am, the people I come from, not just what we see in TV, especially back when I was a kid, we do come from kings and queens, and we do come from people who have done wonderful things. So remembering that, knowing that, helps me navigate and help me navigate a hostile environment. Graduate school was a hostile environment. I learned so much. I'm so happy I did it, but it was not easy being the only Black woman in my graduate class, and a young Black woman at that. I was really 21 when I started graduate school. So that was really difficult. What helped me through it was always knowing that, as my mom said, I come from kings and queens, that I could do this. Other people, and even more, joining the Association of Black Psychologists, being around people who looked like me, that had navigated, that survived. I knew that if they could do it, that I could do it. So finding your supports, right? Figuring out who the people that are safe are and connecting with them. I always suggest I'm mentor to many, right? Anybody that's been an intern with me or has been in one of my classes when I've taught at various universities and colleges, I'm always open to mentoring them, because I think having a mentor, somebody that looks like you, understands your experience, and has already gone down the road that you're trying to go down, is so important. So you have that safe space to talk about these things. When you're in a hostile environment, you need a safe space to understand some of that hostility, to be reminded that that hostility doesn't have to do with you, and to figure out how to navigate it. So having that mentor to help you navigate is so important.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. And I think just to kind of caveat off for that, with knowing self and working in a hostile environment or being in a hostile environment, also knowing what your triggers are, right?
Yes.
Knowing what your triggers are. So can we talk about that a little bit too? How to and I know this is a lot to unpack, but just to kind of just navigating what your triggers are and how to determine when you're in that space so you'll know what to do in that moment. So can we talk about that just a little?
We can try to talk about that just a little. That's a big one. Now, we're taking a little bite off of a huge one.
Exactly. We have big jobs to say yes.
Yes, it's a big one, and it's a personal one. So it's so important for you to know what your triggers are, because your triggers are not going to be the same as my triggers and somebody else's triggers. So it's really about, again, knowing yourself. And figuring that. But so let me answer the question by telling you how you can figure out what your triggers are. Since, right? You can figure out what your triggers are through that mentorship process, like having a mentor and talking through things that will help you identify things that are triggering you. You can do it through journaling. Journaling can be really powerful to write things down, and you'll start to see patterns of things. So you'll understand that when, Becky said this and Sarah said that, you had the same reaction. Right? Even though it's two different people. So you can start to see what your triggers are. Therapy, of course, is a wonderful place to find your triggers. Or even a really good trusted friend, somebody that you trust, that you can be vulnerable with, that you can talk through these things with. But it is so important to know your triggers. And that's part of what I talked about earlier on, anticipating. When you know your triggers, and then you can anticipate, then you can find ways to work with them and to strive to minimize the opportunity to be triggered, or to minimize the time that you're in that distressed state because you were triggered, because you now know what to do in order to get back to inner peace. You have the tools to get back to inner peace.
And thank you so much for sharing that. I was just like, oh, that was such a great question, but do we know what our triggers are? So thank you for that. Yeah. But I think it's a good segue into therapy. So when do we go to therapy? We can't have a therapist on the line and don't ask that question, because sometimes the how and the why is so important. Not sometimes, all the time. It's the how and the why is so important. So You know, how do we get there? How do we get to therapy? Why do we get to therapy? When do we go? When do we go?
I think we should all go. That's the bottom line. Especially people of color living in this hostile environment. I think we all need to go. Just about everybody living through COVID, we all need to go. So, and I say that because there's still such a stigma, right? And so I don't think it's about necessarily having any particular trauma or feeling depressed for any length of time. I think therapy is something we can all make use of, no matter where we are. We can get to know ourselves better, get to understand our triggers better, figure out how to navigate relationships better. So therapy can be useful no matter what, no matter when. And sometimes it's really good for preventative, right? Care. But like I suggest that couples have couples therapy before you get married. Let's look at some of these things, because very often couples don't come to me until things are so dire. They've gone so far down the road. It's so much harder to navigate back. But if you come before and you now understand your triggers, or your triggers as a couple, or your challenges as a couple, then it helps you navigate through them. So the easy answer is we should all go. However, the reality is there not enough therapists to go around. There are not enough culturally understanding therapists to go around. So we can't all go. I'd say then in that case, when the distress is beyond what you can deal with by yourself and with the resources you have, then therapy is a wonderful tool to help you move past that distress. And distress meaning you're not sleeping, not just one night. Insomnia for one night, it happens to everybody. But on a regular basis, you're having difficulty sleeping. You find yourself busting out into tears randomly, and you have no control and don't even know when that's going to happen. You're sad and not enjoying life. Those kinds of things. When you're in those kinds of spaces for a prolonged period of time, prolonged meaning more than a couple of days, more than on occasion, then therapy might be a good space to help you better understand and learn some new tools in order to handle whatever's going on for you. And certainly if there's been a trauma, and a trauma is more than just something that's life-threatening, although that used to be the definition. Mm-hmm. A trauma is anything that feels that disruptive to who you are, right? So it can be something life-threatening that's happened to you, but it can be the death of a loved one. It can be watching someone die on social media. That can be traumatizing. Mm-hmm. And we've certainly been through many traumas now. So if you've identified that you've had a trauma, that's also a good time to check in with somebody and get some support.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. We had a couple of comments coming in. Knowing your triggers are very important when dealing with PTSD. Therapy is so important, especially in children from communities I'm from. What is this? Agreed. Some are afraid to go. However, I'm convinced others to try therapy who are hesitant. So those are some great comments. Thank you all for providing that. What I would like to do also is give everyone an opportunity to ask some questions if you have any with Dr. Akhu. You know, I'm so honored and so glad that she's taken time out of her schedule to join us. And we're talking about cultivating inner peace and having an opportunity to have these access to these resources. So if there's some questions you would like to ask, please take advantage of that and ask them. We have Wendy. I like to the definition. I like that definition of trauma. Anything that is disruptive to you. That is such a valid point. Yes, that is so true. I don't think we look at it like that, Dr. Akhu.
Yeah, we don't. And there's actually a question here. How do you convince others to try therapy who are hesitant? And I think that's a really good question, because it comes up a lot around me. And it's difficult. Remember, you can lead horses to water, but you can't make them drink. And that people all need to have a sense of their own efficacy, right? Empowerment. So we can't make anybody do anything. You can't convince anybody, but I find if you feel comfortable sharing your own journey, like very often sharing our journey of how we move from being in pain or challenged to being in a place of more peace is helpful. And so that would be my number one suggestion. If you can find ways to share your own journey, or to, some of the celebrity journeys out there, those videos of celebrities talking about their mental health journeys can also be helpful if you don't have your own journey.
Because it
That's a
just
really
kind
good
of
question.
shows you that you can be on the other side of this. You can come through this. And,
Yes.
I always tell people when they see me, sometimes they're like, oh, well, you just kind of seem like you're so put together. And I'm like, it didn't start here. I was led to advocacy because of the trauma that I've experienced in my own personal life. I didn't start here. It's still a process. It's still a healing journey. I like to say that I'm a thriving survivor, but every single day, it's a process. And I have triggers and I have to learn. So I'm so glad that we're talking about this. I love the breathing techniques, and all of these, even as an advocate, using tools like this to kind of assist you throughout the day, taking a moment for yourself as you're continuing to pour. So this is great stuff, not just for people that have experienced trauma, but for people that are working with individuals that have experienced trauma, so you've got to be able to take on some of these techniques. I have another one here, another comment. I believe those who go to therapy should share. If they know and trust you, they will consider it. That's a very valid point.
Exactly.
Very, very valid point. So I know we're coming close to that time. It's about 11:50. This has been, oh my goodness, amazing this morning. Do we have any questions that anyone has for us before we let Dr. Akhu go? In the meanwhile, what I would like to do is, Dr. Akhu, if you could please share with us, you're an author, you have 8 self-care books. And could you kind of talk about that a little bit? How can we get in contact with you? And could you write also in the comment section your email address or your website so we can find you?
Okay, what I should I do that first? I don't know if I can talk and write at the same time.
Okay, well, talk first, and then we'll
what
leave
I'm
it
going to
open
do
so
is
you
I'm
can write.
going to talk first, and then I will write in the comments as you are closing out.
Okay,
I'll put it in there because I can't. This all negotiation is new to me, and I definitely can't do that. Those two things, can't walk and chew gum at the same time in this space.
No
so,
problem.
But I'm excited to talk about what I am working on for 2022.
Yes.
I'm starting a movement. The goal of the movement is to help 1 million Black women redefine what it means to be strong. We all know what we talk about when we talk about the strong Black woman, right? Well, the new strong Black woman has an increased joy, decreased stress, and has learned to cultivate inner peace. Part of that movement, which I'm calling the Strong Black Woman Redefined, is creating a community. And within that community, I'm providing all the tools, resources, and partnerships to facilitate inner peace, what every strong Black woman deserves. And so I'm so excited that we are going to be launching our first small community group in January. And we will be working on this campaign, starting this movement all next year, and really making sure that we feel strong. We can say no. We learn how to say no. We learn tips and tools like anticipating, the breath square, and so many others. I had a few others that I didn't even get a chance to talk about. I can't believe how fast this time went.
I know. Oh my God.
I didn't even get a chance to talk about my favorite one, which is gratitude, which is a superpower.
Oh yes.
And we don't even have time to talk about that. So
we'll have to bring you. We'll have to bring you back.
We'll have to do it again
if you have time before the end of the year. Because actually, I have notes on here that I wanted to talk to you about gratitude and why that is so important. Exactly. We mentioned that briefly yesterday, gratitude, and I was like, I'm saving that for Dr. Akhu. But you're right.
We don't have time. It's 11:53. We don't have time. So we need to, but yes, gratitude is one of my favorites. I have a whole series of workshops all around gratitude that show people tips and tools on how to integrate that into their lives. And I'll just say in short, gratitude's a superpower because it's a real mind shift, and everything begins and ends in our minds with the stories we tell ourselves, with how we perceive things. And gratitude is such a powerful way of shifting in any circumstance. For example, COVID's definitely been challenging, right? But if you can think of 3 things that you're grateful for, like being able to learn new technology, and like now I can do Instagram Live almost. But being able to connect our family, this great big family that I talked about that has dinner late, we've also been doing weekly Zooms. Right. We got together a lot as a family before, but now to have weekly Zooms is something that came out of COVID. So you can find good things no matter how dire the circumstance. And when you focus your mind on those good things, they amplify. And that's a wonderful way to mind shift so that you can get back to inner peace. So we did it short. That's still not as much as I wanted to go into, but we got it.
No, I think that this is great. I think everyone is enjoying it. And I just wanted to say thank you so much. What I'm doing right now is I'm putting your actual website, drakhu.com, into the comment section in case anyone would like to get in contact with you. So that's what I'm trying to do right now, chewing bubble gum and walking at the same time. But this is such great information. And I want people to be able to get in contact with you because, you know, you're providing us with some much necessary information to inner peace. And one of the things that we have been closing out the conversation with is asking, you know, the folks that are coming on board with us, what does inner peace mean to you? What does it mean to you, Dr. Akhu?
Inner peace to me, as I said in the beginning, means not never getting angry, not never getting sad or upset. What it means is not allowing those negative experiences to take over, to not allow them to snowball, to have the tools that I need in order to come back to a sense of peace, and to have that sense of peace be my baseline. Right? That's where I am most of the time, so that it's notable when I'm not in that space and that I can return to it and not deny, because feelings are important. They communicate something to us. When we get angry, it's important information. So we don't want to not be angry. We want to understand why we're angry. And once we have that understanding, then move away from the anger. And if we don't have the tools to do that, we get angry and then we stay angry and then we get angrier again. And we just stay in that space and it snowballs. So understanding that feelings are information, and taking that information in and then knowing how to get back to a space of peace, calm, happy, and enjoying life. Because, we have one life to live. We don't know what else is on the other side. So we deserve to be satisfied with how we're living.
Absolutely. Dr. Akhu, you have been amazing. I just want to say thank you so much. We've got love coming in for you. We've got hearts coming in. I just want everyone to know before we close out with our last breathing technique that if you're trying to get in contact with Dr. Akhu, you can reach her at www.drakhu.com. Please follow her on her social media platforms. She's on LinkedIn and she's on Instagram, Facebook. But definitely you can check out the link in Interactive Advocacy's bio. There we'll have her entire her bio posted so you can kind of get some more information. Please check out her books. Where can we find your books, Dr. Akhu?
My books are all available on Amazon, and there's a link on my website for at least the latest book, which is Cultivating Inner Peace, which fits our topic.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Please get her book. Check it out. This has been a great, a beautiful session, an empowering session. So thank you so much for the tools that you gave us. But I want to close out. We have 2 minutes left. Can you take us through that breathing technique one more time for everyone, especially some of the folks just coming on board?
I'm going to explain it really quick just in case there's anybody that just came on board. What we're going to do is we're going to inhale for a slow count of 4. We're going to hold the breath in our lungs for a slow count of 4. We're going to exhale to a slow count of 4, and then we're going to wait before we breathe in again for a slow count of 4. I'm going to do this with my finger, so you can follow my finger. You can draw a square around whatever screen you're watching, or you can close your eyes and just listen to the sound of my voice, which I better lubricate this quickly before I start counting. And for those of you who did it before, really try to breathe in deeply, as deep as you can. Completely fill your lungs with air and try to exhale completely, creating a vacuum so that you can completely fill your lungs the next time. Okay, here we go. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Exhale. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4. Inhale. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4. Exhale. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4. Inhale. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4. Exhale. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4. Return to breathing as usual.
Oh man, that was amazing.
Yeah, and definitely do that as you fall asleep at night. If you're having difficulty, if you're thinking too much, thinking about counting to 4 and following the breath can help your brain stop running races and help you calm down so that you can get to sleep.
Oh my gosh, Dr. Akhu, thank you so much. Thank you for joining us this morning. Thank you for all of these tools that you allowed us to put in our Inner Peace Toolkit, Cultivating Inner Peace. Dr. Akhu, this has been a beautiful morning with you. Thank you so much. And thank you all for joining us today at our third session of Finding Inner Peace After Trauma. Interactive Advocacy will be back here again this afternoon. It's not over yet. We're doing this until tomorrow. We'll be back this afternoon talking to Ms. Luban, thriving and living your best life after trauma. And I just want to say again, thank you so much. We appreciate you. We appreciate you being here, and just, peace and blessing to you. You have a beautiful day. And if I don't talk to you, happy holidays. And thank you all for joining us. Thank you so much. It has been fabulous. And we look forward to seeing you all back here. And until next time, continue to be unstoppable.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Pick it up, pick it up, pick it up. You see the drippy, I'm fitted up. Hop in my car and I get it up. Secure the bag, yeah, I get the bus. Pick it up, pick it up, pick it up. You see the drippy, I'm fitted up. Hop in my car and I get it up. Secure the bag, yeah, I get the bus. Pick it up, pick it up, pick it up, pick it up.